Wonderful. This segues very nicely into the level 1 material, which was about the connection of DNA to the time cone. And this is all about the ascended master timeline, or that path of least likelihood, and what happens when your time cones overlap. Okay, so I know that I've drawn this a million billion times. This is the simplification or cross-section of the time vortex, which is two-dimensional and in cross-section. But that is only a portion of the chakra shape, because remember, the chakra shape is shaped like this. I have 4 vortexes. So you can see this down here is this, what I've just drawn right there, but I've still got 1, 2, 3 other vortexes to deal with. That would be shaped like this. This is what your life is really shaped like. And this area that I'm highlighting in red down here, that's one corporeal existence. That's like who you are right now with your 2 arms and 2 legs. Now I'm going to highlight a different one in blue, this one up here. That is a different corporeal existence. In the lesson that I was just giving for level 1, I drew a big, giant, stretchy beach ball of the universe, and then I dimpled it, you know, from one direction with one giant cosmic finger and from the other direction with my other giant cosmic finger. Symmetry is definitely a force and a truth in the universe. And what I'm talking about now is time symmetry. It has been very misleading for me to just always be drawing one time cone like this, because that would be like showing an impulse. You know, one impulse is going in that direction. And what you really have are 4 impulses, and they are all traveling, pardon me, to the source right there. Impulse, 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 impulse. And they are all traveling at the same time and in balance. So there's a couple of different ways this can go. It can go at the same time. This guy balances out with this guy, or this guy balances out with this guy, or all go at once, all going towards the center at once. But what you cannot have is just one going towards the center, because that's not symmetrical. Okay? And that would be out of balance in the tapestry of the universe. So there's a couple of different directions I need to go. One is, this is you. This is your ball of awareness, and you're exploring everything that's happening in this time cone down here. All of these timelines are you. At the very same time that you're going through that experience, there's another person that is going in this direction, and they are causing the stretching and bending of the fabric of the universe, and they're exploring all of their timelines like this. And guess what? Those 2 beings are intimately connected. This is symmetry and this is balance in the universe. Question? Soulmates. Beyond soulmates. Like my hand and my other hand, literally, because my hands are symmetrical. That means that they match up in mirror image. So these are the mirror images. This is like hand 1 and hand 2 on your diagram of your timelines. It's one body. This, when I circle this whole thing, this whole vortex shape, this is all you. Even though it might comprise several different corporeal existences, because when this shape is made, when you have this 4 vortex shape, energy flows around the 4 vortexes. These are all connected energetically. I know that I showed the basics, how energy flows around the torus in week 2. So I'm highlighting it with red. I hope you can see, because it flows in from the top, goes down, and then comes up like this. ooh, look at that. And then goes down the top again and comes out the bottom and goes up the top like this and then goes down the bottom like this. So, and what I just outlined is the membrane of death. I'll do it again. This membrane right here, that edge along there. Look, I'm outlining the membrane of death of one person's life. And now as I continue, I don't know if you can see that I'm going to make it super, super fat and heavy. I'm outlining the membrane of death. All right, and I made it to the wormhole, and now what am I doing? Wow, I'm outlining the membrane of death on another life cone. And now I'm circulating up around here, and oh, look at that. I am the membrane of death on another life cone. And now I am the membrane of death on another life cone. As the energy of awareness is circulating throughout these various cones, you are inextricably interconnected with your consciousness that is investigating these alternative timelines and time vortexes. And you know what else I realized? I wanted to start off with some more Merkaba stuff for advanced Merkaba for this class. Want to make sure that Lucy is around. If she's on this call, then I'll do it. If not, I'll save it for a subsequent day. But Lucy, if you're here tonight.
Hello, it's Lucy on the phone.
Hey, Lucy. Okay, cool. I'm going to record this and hopefully...
And I tell you, I played with pipe cleaners for a long time, and it's not easy.
Exactly. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this even though I know you're on the phone because it's recorded. You'll be able to catch up.
Oh, no, I'm running up to Inanna's house now, so I'll be able to see it on the screen in 5 minutes.
Wonderful. I'll save it. When you're at a screen where you can see what's going on, tell me what's up, and then I'll do the demonstration for you.
Yippee! Hooray!
Yes, because a picture's worth 1,000 words, a diagram is worth 1,000,000 words. Come on. Cut out cardboard diagram, that's worth 1,000,000 words. Okay, great.
All right, see you in 5.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
And I mute the phone just so that we don't have static and reverb and everything like that. Okay, so now I'm getting back to this. We'll do Merkaba in a few more minutes when they get to their screen. So this is the circulation of energy throughout the various life cones, time cones that are just within one organism. Now I need to draw even more stuff because these 4 vortexes, these exist in a matrix. They exist in a whole setup. Let me just draw some. And here we go. These are, I just drew 3 because I'm just trying to do this fast. So we have these, this is like the universe at rest. Before these, I keep drawing them as red, before these red impulses cause the bending and stretching of the fabric of space and time and awareness. So I'm drawing these giant balls. These are like meant to be the heavy bowling balls of awareness. And what happens is this is a matrix of energy that is moving together. So when these two come together in the middle like that, they then crash together and form a reaction splitting apart. And when they split apart, I'll use blue to go in the opposite direction. So then they split apart and they go like that and they go like that. But guess what? There is an impulse coming from here and going in this direction because there was impulses that went like this. And they came together head to head and they are now splitting apart. So they're splitting apart like that. And then this very interesting thing happens where these two blue arrows came together. So I hope that this diagram makes sense. We have energy that is oscillating. When it hits the other energy that is oscillating, it reflects back. And this is what creates this oscillating matrix of chakra shapes. These are constantly dimpling and undimpling, or being made into a, and if you can see that up there, like if this is a flat membrane, going up into a vortex shape, and then going flat, and then going down into a vortex shape, and then popping back up. This is like in level 1 when I recorded this tonight. What I said was we are learning that DNA is not a flat, static object, but that it is always twisting and oscillating. Hi there, I see that you've arrived, and we're going to do Advanced Merkaba. The twisting and oscillating here is of consciousness. So we have these balls of consciousness that are both heading towards the source. If they're heading towards, you're using my shadow of my finger, they're heading towards that little central area, then they are heading towards the source. And when they meet, they then bounce apart and go in the opposite direction where they meet their opposites. So you could almost think of these areas along here as mirrors where you are constantly meeting and being reflected. Okay, gonna do Advanced Merkaba from last week. All right, so get ready. Okay. So I know I'm changing gears a little bit here. I'm starting off with tetrahedron, 4-sided, and I also realize everyone in class, please forgive me. Sometimes I gloss over things that I think I have said clearly, but that's just because they're up here, but they're not yet out here. So in understanding the Merkaba, one of the first things is to understand that it is made out of equilateral triangles. Equilateral meaning all of the edges have the same length and all of the angles are the same. 60 degrees, 60, 60, 60 degrees, okay? And what we're doing, when we start off with the Merkaba shape, we have 8 equilateral triangles. And when I do these tricks, these are just like magic tricks of the universe. All I'm doing is rearranging the ingredients according to the rules that I'm allowed to do, all right? So when we start off with the Merkaba, we have 2 tetrahedra, and that's a 4-sided pyramid. So I've got equilateral triangles on all sides, and I'll do my other one too. All right, even though I cannot make them interpenetrate because they're solid, but you can see how they fit together. Now, in order to do that maneuver where I connect together these 2 lines, right, these 2 edges with a line and make it start to look like an octagon, what I do is take the bottom of my tetrahedron and flip it up to, oops, let me try it again because I didn't have it quite situated right. I take my bottom of my tetrahedron and I flip it up to the top. And now what I have is a pyramid with 4 equilateral triangle sides and no bottom. And this is what the pyramid of Great Pyramid in Egypt is shaped like. 4 equilateral triangles as the sides and no bottom. And I hope you can see this here. It's not that perfect, but when you line it up just right, that makes a 90-degree angle up here. So the magic of the Great Pyramid is that we take triangles that all have 60 degrees, but we put them together into a format that gives us a 90-degree angle. And what did I just record using this as my visual image for the 2nd dimension popping forward into the 3rd dimension? The idea that the 90-degree angle is the magical angle necessary to pop forward into the next dimension. That is one of the pieces of information that is graphically contained within the Great Pyramid at Giza. And I'll do a whole teaching that's just about the pyramid and why it is important and special. But the idea is we have rearranged one of the tetrahedrons into a shape of a pyramid like the one in Egypt. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. I just need to kind of, not that easy to do with one hand, but I'll get it. All right. That was pretty easy. And so now I've got kind of two ice cream cones, right? And then we make an octahedron by placing them both together. Oops, and that is an octahedron, all right? So we have changed our basic, I wish I knew where my little Merkaba shape was, but we changed our basic twin tetrahedron shape into this octahedron shape. And we didn't break any rules in doing so. All that we did was took the same energy and rearranged it into a new format. These are some of the tricks of the trade here in the world of energy and dealing with energy. There are some things you're allowed to do and some things you're not allowed to do. Like you're not allowed to just cut the fabric of the universe. I'm not allowed to just cut one of these triangles in half, or to do something non-symmetrical. But we're allowed to do this because we haven't gone against any of the other rules of the universe. So, Lucy, did this help to make sense of what I've been describing verbally?
And if I wasn't here, I would not have to put my body through having to deal with your toxins.
You deal with toxins every single day of your life in that office.
No,
and
but
I'll also say, when I do this change and shift, I don't necessarily think to myself, okay, now I have to take the bottom and flip it up to the top. I don't actually think in that way at all. It's just like if you have ever done one of those optical illusions where the picture could either be a camel or a pretty woman, and your eye flips back and forth between the two of them, or one of those optical illusions where you can't tell if something is going away from the camera or coming towards the camera, and you can kind of flip back and forth. That is the type of mental shift that we do when we do this. Did this come through? Did this make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Wonderful. Fantastic. Okay. So redirecting and getting back to some of these ideas of the ascended master timeline and being connected to, in a matrix, to many other lives and lifetimes, and that this is affecting you and your consciousness on its journey. Just need a little drink here. So first of all, I want to give you a really important tool for dealing with demons and lower vibrational negative entities. If we say that this central timeline right here is the timeline of ascended masterhood, the person who is occupying this central timeline is as let's say as refined as Buddha or Jesus or Krishna, that they are a perfect person, a perfected person. Because this whole time vortex shape, this is like the laser, like the apparatus that creates a laser, an apparatus for focusing consciousness. That means focusing consciousness away from the aspects of self that are not true and eternal. These outliers, these areas that are out here, a lot of times those represent very distorted versions of self. Like, something, if I took a perfectly nice person and I put them in a prison camp like, Guantanamo or something like that, and I tortured them and never fed them, everything, they would eventually turn into a horrible wreck, and they would be a twisted, diminished, distorted version of who they really could have been. And each one of us has at least one timeline where you're that person, where you're not this beautiful well-fed person who sleeps in a nice warm bed, where you're a person who might have to sleep under a bridge and have no health care and no food. That version of you, lying out there in the far outlier, is not your true self. And when you ascend, you will be embodying this central timeline. All of this other stuff, this outlier stuff, that will all collapse. That will all be resolved. However, when you experience torment on a mental level, and I've spoken about in this class lower vibrational service to self entities who would like to harm you and steal from you or harm your mentality or diminish your mentality, that the reason why they exist and their whole motivation is that they are trapped in the interstices without food. And if they come to you for food and they want to poke you and prod you and get you to release negativity so that you will feed them, here is a very crucial thing you can do. Call upon the ascended master that is their eternal self. Because each one of us has an eternal self. I'm going to draw like a big blue dot up here and say, that is who you really are. And all of these red squiggles coming off of it, those are emanations, but those are not the real you. And let's say one of these emanations reaches down into someone else's mind and hurts them. What if it, says something really mean and nasty and the person gets distracted and they drive, off the road and they kill themselves in a car wreck? These red tendrils are responsible for murder. These red tendrils are the outgrowths of an ascended master, because I've done this as the logic. We all will essentially be ascended masters. Therefore, every demon has an ascended master that it emanates from. It's like saying every demon is a shadow self or an unconscious aspect of self of a perfected being who is an ascended master. And if you ever find yourself being harmed or negatively affected by a demon, you are within your legal cosmic rights to call upon the ascended master who is the emanator of that distortion to rein in and deal with their own distortion. Because once you exit the wormhole, once you get out of, this time cone, I know I've drawn it before, you find yourself in a new time cone, in a new vortex, where you then have to be refined again. And that's what the next process of refinement is, where you begin to understand the totality of what you experienced in the time cone. At first, you experience it being submerged within it. Then, after you exit the experience, you get to experience it with perspective. Let's talk about perspective. And you know something, guys, when I do the class presentation, I refer to the recorded homework lessons, but I don't reiterate them because it is what it is, and we need to have a new flow of information for right now. But I'm touching on all the topics that are in the recorded homeworks. If you haven't checked them out, they're definitely worth looking into. This is the idea of what your time cone is shaped like this, and that comprises every single different possibility that you ever could exist and experience. What would your life be like if your life is like a movie? And I'm going to draw an old-fashioned movie reel, okay? And this is the film that comes off the reel, right? And it's made up of individual frames. This is not a digital movie. This is why I'm drawing it this way. Perhaps I am showing myself to be from a previous century. But each one of these is an individual moment or a frame of your life. And this is absolutely analogous to how we experience our daily, day-to-day life. First of all, in your eyes, and we'll talk about eyes and our system of perception. In your eyes, you have a visual phenomenon called persistence of vision. Not persistence of memory. That's the Salvador Dali painting that's quite famous of the melting clocks. We're talking about persistence of vision. This is the understanding that your eye apparatus works by taking a series of snapshots of the world that you're looking at, and then your mind and your perception and your brain and your neurology and your awareness tie together those snapshots with the integument of movement. So when you see my arm moving across the screen like this, you don't actually see my arm moving across the screen like this. You see an image like this, an image like this, an image like this, an image like this. And then your awareness, perception, mind, consciousness fills in the blanks to show you what appears to be a seamless flow of information. Sorry, I don't know why that just did a little interruption of me there. This goes back to ancient animation. I'm going to draw it for you a little bit. It's called a zoetrope. Wheel of Life. This was essentially a bin or a cylinder that had slits cut in the side at regular intervals. And it would be, mounted on a pole so that you could spin it around. And this is from like 500 or 600 years ago. People would draw a very simple series of drawings, like a person up here, a person down here, a person up here. And then when you line the inside of the cylinder with the drawings and give it a spin, if you spin it at just the right speed, the flickering motion of the slits as they go by fools your eye and your system of perception into tying together these movements into a set of integuments so that it looks like the images are moving. Or even more simplistically, if you've ever made a flip book, like maybe in your math book at school, doodling in the margins so that when you flip the pages really fast, it looks like a little animation. All of this comes from persistence of vision. This is because how our system of perception is set up. So in the recorded lesson, I speak all about how the fact that you're binocular, I, gives you duality and sets you up for having to overcome the pre-programming of your biological constitution. That just being in this physical form, in this physical body, makes you subject to certain preconceptions and dualities. And this is part of the challenge and also part of the cool thing about it. We are here experiencing being submerged in a body, and then eventually you will have something else to compare it to. I've been not submerged in the body, and I definitely have felt the difference when I'm submerged in this biological container and how it gives rise to concomitant duality. So the first idea here is that you have two eyes, and that the way that your system of perception works is by taking a snapshot with this eye and then calculating the difference. If we have the blue version is from your left eye and the orange version is from your right eye, then the red area would be what your brain and system of perception calculates as reality. And you can do simple scientific experiments with this. If you hold a pen out at arm length and you squint one eye, you squint the other eye, you can see very easily how it looks like it is jumping from left to right. I love my little simple science experiments, even though I'm not a scientist. This has everything to do with the way that your brain is wired and the way that you approach physical reality just based on this differential, just based on calculating this differential. And a couple of other things too. So part of it is the difference of I versus I. And I also spoke about how in personal development, when you're a little tiny child and you're in your crib or whatever, and you develop the sense of me versus not me. And I'm going to get into DNA also. Me versus not me, all right? You have the cell membrane, and that is analogous to your skin. In fact, all of the advances and stages of development that you go through as an individual mirror what happened on a planetary level in terms of evolution. So planetary, what began was there was an undifferentiated sea of goo filled with amino acids and, all sorts of electrical impulses. It was just a bunch of stuff. And then eventually, one day, the cell membrane was created. The very first membrane, the very first boundary, the very first thing that made a differentiation between the stuff that's inside of the thing versus the stuff that's outside of the thing. And that word, versus, that's a crucial word, because anytime in your mind and thinking and belief system and system of perception that you find yourself using the word versus, you're engaging in duality. And the flying rainbow lasagna, the whole point of my mission being here and what I have to share is the solution to resolving duality, so you can transcend it and not be limited by it anymore. The first part of that is analyzing and understanding the present system. This all works on contrast, and I'm going to get into your eyeballs also. So first we go to the cell and the cell membrane. The cell membrane is created, and then all of a sudden there's an individual. It's not a group consciousness anymore. It's not a bunch of amino acids that are all in the soup together. There's a bunch of amino acids that are in the soup together, and then there's me. I'm an individual. I'm inside of the cell membrane. So we begin at that moment to develop a distinction between self and other. But I was just speaking in the previous hour's lesson on level 1 about how even though, if this is, here I'll draw, here is one cell and here's the other cell and here's your 2 nuclei, and cell 1 might send out a hormone or something like that to interact with the cell membrane of cell number 2, even though it seems like this guy is like, who is this guy over here? Clearly that's not me. Clearly that is other. All of this is happening within, I'm just drawing like, a giant organism. All of this is happening within the organism of the cosmos. And the individual you and the individual who is quote unquote not you are actually both you. If you define you as this giant overarching principle. Okay, this matters because in your own body you send out hormones. Like here's a red hormone and it comes along and it touches the cell membrane. It makes the cell do stuff. And the cell is like, what this hormone coming at me from somewhere else and making me do things? Stop making me do things, like I'm an individual. Stop telling me what to do. Without understanding that this hormone does not originate from someone else. It actually originates from the overarching organism that you are living within, okay? What if the hormone that reaches you is a word from my mouth? What if you're like, I'm an individual cell, I'm me, and I'm not Aurora. She's a different person. And Aurora is somehow sending out a word to me that's going to get through my cell membrane and cause changes inside of me? Yes, yes, yes. I am doing all of those things because I am a cell that, although I'm not you, we are both within the same overarching body. Okay? We're getting there. So our biology prompts us to make distinctions, to say me versus not me, or light versus dark, or hot versus cold, to make distinctions. Let's also talk about how your actual retina works, like the cells on your retina. And I bring this up because I am very visually oriented. I'm an artist. When cosmic truth comes to me and comes through me, the first way that it is presented or expressed is through shape and color and line, and really visually is how I feel it. And then secondarily, I do hear it as music and I'm understanding it more as tone. But in terms of basic truth of the universe, when it first comes to me, I understand it visually. And I understand that humans as a whole, I'm making a generalization, are very visually oriented, as opposed to, for example, bats that are oriented to sonar, or dogs that are more oriented to smell. Humans do not have a very acute nose, and that's why they're not oriented to smell, okay? So I'm in a human body, I'm giving teachings for humans here, but I will tell you that There's got to be a dog out there that has a completely different viewpoint that is equally as valid, because dogs are also on the planet and also raising their vibration and in the process of ascension at the same time. I just need a little drink here. But I am a part of the cosmic body, and I'm speaking to you, and you are also a part of the cosmic body. So we have a couple of things here. The idea that all of these time vortexes, several different lives that are all intertwined together. The idea that the cell membrane is a false or arbitrary distinction. It's actually the goo that is in here is actually not any different from the goo that is out here. The only difference is the definition of what it is contained within. And wow, I mean, a lot of things can change when you begin to identify with the overarching organism as opposed to just the goo that is within your own particular container. I'm pausing this so that I can save this recording. And then, here we go. This is level 2. Okay. Just give it a moment while it saves. There we go. Okay. And let me just pull up a picture so I have a little something to gesture to. Okay. And get a picture of a person. Thank you for bearing with me. And I even have a visual aid to share with you. This will be interesting. I'm not sure if this is going to work on the screen back there, but this is a optical illusion that shows how the cells of your retina work. And it might not work well because it's a projection, but at each one of these intersections, there is a dot that's white, and these are actually gray lines. And the optical illusion is that when you look at this, especially if you shift your eyes a little bit left and right, you will see at the center of the white dot a black dot. The black dot is a artifact or a phantom or a false image that's only really there because of what your eyeballs are doing. And if you have an interest in looking at that little optical illusion on your own computer screen in a way that you can see it much more easily, I will happily email that little image out to everyone so that you can, or place it on the Facebook page so that you can see what I'm talking about. That, I think it's called Venn dots, and the way that there we go, the way that optical illusion is created is by the cells on your retina and the way that they work. If you have one cell in the middle and then you are surrounded by a couple of other cells, and if this is a beam of light, the beam of light comes in to your retina and it touches this cell, that cell is already standing up. We are thinking of this as like each one of those cells is like my finger, and they are standing up. And the cell that's in the middle that got some light touched on it, it cannot stand up again. It's already standing up. So in order for it to send a signal to your brain that it just got touched with a photon of light, all of the other cells around it sit down. So all of those other cells go down, leaving that cell standing up. Don't worry, I didn't use the wrong finger. In the picture back here, in a cross section, it would look like this. Here's the central cell that got stimulated, and it's standing up. All of the rest of the cells around it go down. They go down like this, like this, like this, like this, because this is all relative. It is like saying that we sense light by context and relativity. The difference between this height and this height, that difference is how much light or energy was there. So in the retina, the apparatus that is for sensing light in your own life, you are working with contrast. The black dots that happen at these centers, those happen because of all of the peripheral retina cells that, quote unquote, sit down in order to make one cell seem brighter. So the cell, in order for it to make it look like a bright white dot at all of those intersections, the other cells that are all around it all have to diminish. And this is it's showing that everything is relative. This also is how we understand how we calibrate to what is white. So I'm going to hold up something that is white. This is actually white paper. But you know something? I'm in front of a light bulb that is actually quite warm and is very yellowish. And if you actually analyzed this color, you would see that it is yellowish color. I think the screen looks a lot more white. But the whole point is that we calibrate our eyes according to what is white in a room, and then we interpret everything else according to what we have calibrated to white. This is saying that this is all relative. Your perception of the physical world around you from your eye apparatuses is relevant and based in context. And the context is one of a thing versus a thing. The way that we see, the way that we perceive, has a lot to do with seeing edges, the distinction of a bright thing versus a dark thing, or a red thing versus a green thing. This is programming of your perception and your mind and how you look at the world based on your eyes and the cameras that are in front of your head. So I bring this to our attention so that we do not have to be limited by our perception. The first thing is be aware of it, analyze where it comes from, and then the next thing is how do we transcend it. So I don't know if I got into that enough in the actual recorded lesson, but I will tell you here and now that the way that we transcend this duality and thing versus thing is with the flying rainbow lasagna. And this is when we begin to see things in the larger context. So for example, the idea that you are a cell next to another cell within a much larger organism is very much tied to the idea of the flying rainbow lasagna. Let's do more about flying rainbow lasagna and non-duality. Okay, well, one of the first things is, and I don't know if I've gone into this enough in this advanced class, down here at this side of the lasagna, down there at the bottom, that's the singularity, but we've also got the singularity up there at the top. And theoretically, that is a breaking of the rules because we're only allowed to have one singularity. But what I'm really showing is the singularity is first down here, and then it jumps and is up here, and then it jumps and is down here. So I'm saying that it doesn't break the rules because I don't actually have two singularities. I have one singularity that is jumping back and forth so fast, it's as if it's in two places at the same time. And this is what we can do with another person. This is going to be good. Or with a planet, or with a sun. Here we go. Oops. I'm just getting another picture. Bear with me. Sometimes I can do it really fast, and sometimes it's, a little bit slower. Here we go. Person plus person. Alrighty. Here we go. So now I have person plus person. And what we can really do is connect these two people, because guess what? This guy over here has a singularity within them, and this person over here has a singularity within them. And the flying rainbow lasagna is what happens when we connect this person's singularity, I'm drawing a big giant black dot, and this person's singularity. We take this shape of them and we turn them into a flying rainbow lasagna. Imagine this jumping back and forth so fast that it's actually shaped like this. This jumping back and forth so fast is what makes this shape happen. That is also how you combine essences with a thing. This has everything to do with how do you do something with the flying rainbow lasagna. Let's be practical. Let's do something with it. So for example, and I do have lessons and meditations about how to do this, how to flying rainbow lasagna with the sun. This is actually from level 1. First of all, flying rainbow lasagna can be a verb. You can do it. And you can do it with someone or something or with an object. And I do it with the sun all the time. And the way that I do that is, first, I feel the singularity within me. It can be in your heart, but I usually feel it behind my third eye. And then I project that singularity in me into whatever I'm combining with. So usually it can be the sun, but it can also be the earth. It can be another person. And when I do that, so like if this is me over here, and I have the singularity, well, let's use a singularity color, I don't know, blue. Singularity inside of me here, I then send the singularity out here. And let's say that's in the sun. And when I do that, I create a flying rainbow lasagna half cone. So this is the half cone of the lasagna, red, orange, yellow, green, and then of course blue, violet, indigo. You can see this is that half cone going up to the sun. That would be analogous to this half cone right there. And then I jump the singularity back to me. This singularity jumps back to me. And what I get then is the singularities inside of me now. And I have a cone like this. And of course, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo. I begin to jump back and forth and oscillate the point of the singularity between myself and whatever I would like to combine with. So I know this is the advanced class, that's why I can share this with you. This is the practice for literally combining your energy with anything. There are no longer boundaries and limitations. I've been speaking today in this class about the invention of the cell membrane, the distinction of thing versus thing, or me versus not me. And now I'm talking about the flying rainbow lasagna as the, I don't want to say reverse, but the way to complete the journey from unity to separation or distinction, and then back to unity again. Because when we do this, I can combine myself with the sun. I can combine myself with another person. I have flying rainbow lasagna with technology. Literally, the concept of technology. You can flying rainbow lasagna with a person, a consciousness, an idea, a thing. And in doing so, in combining your essence with that thing, it is no longer myself versus a thing that is not myself. And all of this journey of consciousness exploration is all about unconditional love. And you're not allowed to impose your choices or your requirements on someone else. You're supposed to accept that they have their journey and their life and their requirements. But what if you are able to expand your identity from the mere encapsulated human identity of who you are within this epidermis? If you can expand your identity to, I am everything within this time context, then you can be powerful and have an impact on the totality without being a bully, essentially, and imposing yourself on other people. So the idea of transcending your individual limitations is all about gaining another dimension and gaining another degree of freedom. But remember, when we're talking about gaining another dimension, gaining another degree of freedom, this is about working from a level of unconditional love, where you are not taking away from someone else's freedom because you're busy imposing your ideas and beliefs and needs on them, but that you are creating greater freedom for yourself by expanding your identity, essentially to your divine identity. When you expand your identity enough, you expand out to the totality, where you are everything. You are the creator of everything and the experiencer of everything. Okay, so I'm actually at a good point where I can pause, and I see that there's a question down in the chat, and this is probably from way before, so I'm going to rewind. So this is from when we were talking about, so Ed was saying, what I meant was there are 4 of these holes, and how do they relate to each other and the singularity in the middle? I think I understand your question, and I will draw the answer. There we go. Okay, let me make a little bit of room over here. Let's draw the 4 vortexes. And let's draw the singularity, but let's draw it really giant. So I think that I'm understanding your question now. It is the question about how these 4 wormholes interact and how they relate to the singularity. I think so.
Are they all different lifetimes of the same soul?
So the question is, are these all different lifetimes of the same soul? And I think the answer would depend upon how we define the word soul, because different traditions or different teachings use the word soul in different ways. I would say that they are all aspects of the same consciousness, or like a ray of light is refracted through a crystal. There's a primary ray of consciousness that is then refracted through this, and this is the crystal. So there is definitely a centralized, we could call it a persona, or a centralized consciousness, or like I want to say a gravity, or a force that holds together and has some relevancy to all of the experiencers in this graph. So if there are more than one physical being in a lifetime in that graph, all of those beings are intertwined and interpenetrating. So that means that if one of those guys if someone over here in this area is reading a book about quantum physics, that will absolutely have an impact on this guy in his lifetime over here, because the energy is flowing around. The energy flows around through all of those lifetimes. And this is how we're understanding graphically the interpenetration of events. I think I spoke about in the episode where it is how to build the layers from the 0th dimension up to the 11th dimension, and describing at a certain point that time is they're like layers of fabric. So we have this is one layer of time, and I put another layer of time on top of that, and then I can take a needle and a thread and I can sew through those layers going up and down like this, and that is what these green lines are back here. That needle and thread going back and forth through these various layers, that is the connection or tying together of experiences that can be so divergent. They could be across millions of years. They could be across various different differences in how you look. Like, for example, one of these time vortexes down here, that could be you living in the time of the Neanderthals. And one of you living over here, that could be you living in the far distant future of billions of years. But the person that is having these concurrent experiences is experiencing the totality. So when they are discovering the first spark of fire in their existence as a Neanderthal. They are also experiencing a wonderful mathematical discovery at the same time in a different level of sophistication. And these, what it would look like is like your timelines are lined up like this. And so what's happening at this knuckle over here? Wow, something similar is happening at that knuckle right there. It could be whatever, having a baby, getting married, getting killed, getting betrayed by a lover. But they're events that are happening over many concurrent existences, and the tone or the theme of the events ties together. And this matters. Proximity matters. What's happening on this timeline is very similar to what's happening on this timeline, but very different from the far outliers, the pinkies, all right? Proximity matters. And this has to do with the DNA. When I was talking about how science understands DNA, it unfurls the whole sweater, chops it up into bits, dissolves it with liquid, and mixes it all up. Science does not validate the relevancy of proximity, of these two timelines being next to each other. Now let's say these are timelines. Now let's say these are genes. Now let's say that this is DNA. And let's say that my index fingers being next to each other has a significance that my pinkies being far from each other does not contain. And that the significance of these two fingers being close together is totally bypassed by the system of analysis that science applies to DNA. That we're starting to understand, or science is starting to understand, that what was called junk DNA is not junk DNA, that it derives its meaning from its placement, like literally where it is. If it is to the left of your screen or to the right of your screen, that has a significance, which of course, if you have taken the sweater and unfurled it and chopped it into bits, you don't know where that molecule came from, if it came from the left or if it came from the right. So your DNA proximity matters. With timelines, proximity matters. That means that what is going on one timeline to the other timeline, if this one is France in the 1700s and this one is 2 million years ago and you're living in a Neolithic, Stone Age community, the number of years that you are separated from chronologically does not matter, but the proximity of events does matter. So if on these two timelines, you might be a woman who's going to give birth on both of these two timelines, that matters. What matters less is the context, exactly whom, exactly in what way, but you're having a similar experience. Or a similar analogy would be on one timeline, you're going to give birth, but on another timeline, you're going to give a big project, like a dissertation or a performance or, perform a symphony, another huge creative explosion. So the idea is that there are reverberations through time, that there's a pattern to events, and that the pattern is harmonic and fractal. Fractal means it is self-similar. Like if I were wearing a shirt with a picture of me on it, who in the picture was wearing a shirt with a picture of me on it? Who was wearing a shirt with a picture of me on it? That's fractal. Harmonic means that it works according to the patterns. And I don't even have to draw those patterns. All of these patterns that are back here in my artwork, those are harmonics. It has to do with mathematical proportions, like having and doubling and having everything fit together properly. So the events of your life are harmonic and fractal, and they fit together and blend and interact beautifully with the events that happen in other aspects of your experience and consciousness, which include experiences in other bodies. Let's say that. Let's say you might have a face that looks different than this face, but you're still the same person or a shard of the same consciousness experiencing it. I am going to press pause on my own mouth and open the floor to anyone else who has questions or comments. I'm unmuting everyone so that you can, here we go. Here we go. Trying to unmute everyone. There we go. Unmute all. There we go. So absolutely opening up the floor now to any questions or comments or anything from any direction.
I have a question if nobody else does.
That's cool. Ready for it.
Is the sound working okay? Should
I, I think the sound is okay. I'm not getting feedback.
So in that white object with the four vortexes, is there something about fourness in the lifetimes a particular soul fragment has, or is this just a graphic representation of what might be many, many, many more than four?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to mute you just so that I don't have too much echo. Okay. All right. Excellent question, first of all. And the answer is a tricky answer because I know I always show this and that there are 4 vortexes, but there are 2 implied vortexes. That's one that would be in here and one that would be in here.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes, very good. You're thinking in the right direction. So this shape actually represents 6. It represents the sixness of 6.